everyone, I'm Obscure Girl. I like movies. I like weird movies. I like weird, obscure, trippy movies that I feel like no one has seen or is talking about. Whether that's because the marketing was so bad, or because it's just old, or because you're like, I think that was a fever dream I had when I was 5. I'm here to tell you, it wasn't. Let's talk about it. So, if you can't already tell from my attire in my last video, I am fully in spooky season mode. I usually am, but now I get to flaunt it. So, we are going to be talking today about one of my favorite horror comedies, horror classics, horror musicals of all time. I've already used this in 2 of my different lists, and it's about time I do a deep dive. Scared Stiff. Starring Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Also starring Carmen Miranda and Elizabeth Scott. This is a fantastic movie. It is so funny. It is very creepy at closer to the end, and there's a great romance in it, and there is great music that I just have so much nostalgic love for. And even watching it today, I still gotta say, I think it holds up. Definitely in the the old Scooby Doo live action kind of genre. It is black and white. It is so much fun. There is so much slapstick involved. And when the creepy stuff happens, they throw it all at you, and I love them for it. Let's start talking about it. So, just so you're fully aware, this will be a deep dive. This will be a full spoilers ahead review. I'm one of those people that really likes full spoiler reviews because I know that even though I'm getting the play by play of what happens in the movie, I'm not getting the performances, I'm not getting the little nuances, I'm not getting the cinematography, I'm not getting the movie. I'm just getting the is something going to upset me or is this going to be worth it or not kind of a situation. So, without any further ado, this movie takes place in 1953, or it was filmed in 1953. And like I said, stars Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, who used to do a whole bunch of buddy comedies back in the day. And this was their take on a horror comedy. In all these movies, Dino sings and Jerry does the slapstick, and it's combined magic, which is why they were a partnership that made so many movies for so long. This is the main This is the only one I've seen, to be totally honest, but I've been watching this ever since I was a little kid with my mom. It was a lot of my friends' first black and white movies because I kept making them watch it at sleepovers. I was that friend, if you can't already tell from this channel. And it's just so much fun. So, it starts out on a dark and stormy night at this bar and lounge kind of situation where we first see this showgirl named Rosie who is going and making out with this waiter named Pierre. And not that long afterwards, you see Rosie taking off, and Pierre is going about his business and gets stopped by what is clearly a gangster. And the gangster says, "The big man wants to see you," and takes him away. And that is when we stop seeing Pierre. Not that much longer after that, we see Larry Todd, which is Dean Martin's character in this. And he is the lounge singer for this place, and he is headed to his dressing room. And Rosie very quickly enters and starts doing the exact same thing she did with Pierre a couple minutes ago with Larry, even using the same lines and suggesting they go to the same places, which I'm like, all right, like we love a promiscuous mama, but I feel like she's not doing this the right way. I feel like this seems very seedy, and she does not seem um I don't want to say like the good girl because I love me a bad girl. She seems like the trouble girl and not the fun kind. So then Larry takes to the stage and performs the first song of the movie called With My Baby.
Don't care if the sun don't shine to get my loving in evening time when I'm with my baby.
Which is just a fun little, lounge song that he does. And then we are introduced to Myron, which is Jerry Lewis's character. You see the two, like, it's like the head waiter and the maitre d' are talking in the kitchen, and they're like, yeah, Pierre disappeared, but it's okay. We put Myron, the busboy, on Pierre's tables. And the maitre d' is freaking out over this. And sure enough, he follows a trail of spaghetti out to the floor where Myron has been spilling this giant, obnoxiously so plate of spaghetti all over the floor. And when the maitre d's like, "What are you doing?" he literally just like tosses it and it gets all over this one customer's head. Luckily, he was a bald guy, so it's not in his hair or anything, but definitely this fancy couple is covered in spaghetti at this point. And all of this makes so much of a commotion that Larry has to stop the show and draws attention to this. And he's like, "All right, you seem like you like to get a lot of laughs." And Myron's just like, "What, me? No, I'm just getting this cleaned up," as he's like patting the dude's spaghetti covered head still. He's like trying to sort it out like it's hair. And there's a lot of that in this movie. Just the slapstick is so big. I don't even mention most of it in this video because one, that would take so much time, and two, if you're gonna watch this, see it fresh, honestly. Um, but at this point, Larry calls Myron up to the stage. He calls Rosie out, and they're like, "All right, we're gonna do a little skit here." He goes, "I'm gonna be the husband. You are gonna be the debonair swab." And he's like, "Oh, I'm a debonair slob. No, swab. SLOB. Swab." It's funny. And then he walks in and he finds Myron making out with his wife Rosie. Of course, he never gets to actually do that because this whole skit is a way for him to just beat up Myron in the most funny way for interrupting his show and for making a whole scene and everything. And he even Myron keeps switching parts and they just keep making it so Myron just keeps getting beat on, and it's really funny. It's a cute, like, they're not being vicious or mean or anything, but it's just funny, like, interrupt me while I'm singing kind of thing. And then cut to they're back in the dressing room, and you get a little bit of backstory about Larry and Myron. They've been friends since they were kids. Larry's always looking out for Myron like a little brother. He keeps trying to set him up with all these opportunities, and Myron keeps messing up. And they even have like this cute little song about it and everything, and where Dino sings and Jerry does his impression of singing. Yeah, it's the voice, man. It's all the voice. The voice is a choice. And then Myron lets him know, like, "Oh yeah, like I was waiting tables because Pierre went missing, and he got in trouble with the big boy." And Dino's like, "What, Shorty?" Because Shorty, of course, is the name of the mob boss. So stereotypical, and I love it. He's like, "Yeah, he was kissing a girl on the show. He was found dancing with her in a telephone booth." And Dino's like, "A telephone booth? What girl was it?" And Rosie walks in. And he's like, "This one," and scares Dino right on out of the place. To where Myron and Rosie, like Rosie comes after Myron. She's like, "What's wrong with him?" He's like, "Oh, I told you about you and Shorty." She's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Yeah, you better get out of here before Shorty finds out about him." She's like, "Yeah, well, he already did." And sure enough, the phone rings, and you've got Shorty, the mob boss, calling Larry's dressing room. Myron answers the phone, and Shorty says, "Send him down to my room. I want to have a talk with him." So Rosie talks Myron into sticking up for Larry and him going instead to this hotel room filled with mobsters to protect Larry because that's what Larry would do for him. So then we cut to Shorty's hotel where we see, his room full of mobsters. And across the hall, we meet Mary Carroll and Mr. Cortega. Mary Carroll, played by Elizabeth Scott. And she is clearly going to be our leading lady. There's something kind of different about her, kind of thing. Like, she looks out at the dark and stormy night and goes, "Exciting, isn't it?" So you already know she's not going to be your typical kind of girl, that whole chestnut. But she has just recently inherited an island off of Havana called Lost Island. And Mr. Cortega is the executor of her grandfather's estate, and he's supposed to be the one setting her up with the island. The whole time, though, he is warning her against going to this island. He goes, "Anyone who's ever gone there has not lived to see the sunrise," and is just really, really laying it on thick that she should not go to this island. And while he's there, she gets a phone call, a very mysterious phone call from someone named Raymond Carrizo. And he says, "I must really advise you against selling the island to Cortega." And she's like, "What'd you say?" He's like, "I'll be there soon," and hangs up. And so at this point, she knew there was an offer for the island that Mr. Cortega was trying to tell her to accept, but he wouldn't tell her that it was his offer. So there's some mystery here. What's going on? But then you have the best scene in the movie, in my most humble opinion, where you have Myron, who is going into the hotel, and he's trying to talk himself up into what he's going to say to this room full of gangsters, including the big mob boss. And he is trying to talk himself into it, and it's not going well. And he walks past this giant mirror, and he's like, you know, no, I can't do it. And all of a sudden, his reflection in the mirror, in this opposite voice of his, it's this deep, deep voice, calls back. He's like, Myron, where are you going, Myron? This is the voice of your conscience. And he sounds just like that, honestly, which is like so funny. And it's just the scene where Myron's conscience, his reflection, is trying to talk him up into going to protect Larry because that's what Larry would do for him. And he's in this super funny line where Myron's like, they got guns. You could get a gun. They got blackjacks. You could get a blackjack. They got big, strong muscles. You can get a blackjack.
Bob, they got guns.
You can get a gun.
They got blackjacks.
You can get a blackjack.
They got big, strong muscles.
You can get a blackjack.
I die every time. I die. And there's even this like cool effect where he actually like pops his head out of the mirror. And as a kid, I was like, how'd they do that? Like, this is a great one to show the kids. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's not for kids, but it's great. It's a great to watch with kids. There's nothing really like if they are into creepy stuff, they'll love this. So then Myron gets pulled into Shorty's room, full of gang. I'm like, not kidding. There's so many gangsters in this room. It's amazing they all fit. And Myron's trying to like talk, like it gets really noir. Like this whole part, the beginning part of this movie is like a noir. And he tries talking like this, big shot kind of thing, this tough guy. And then he sees Pierre and he's like, oh, Pierre, hey, we were looking for you. Pierre's dead. And then all showmanship goes out the window, and Myron's like, oh boy. So we cut back to where Larry's back in his dressing room, and Rosie's still trying to be all over him. He's like, yeah, no, I don't think so. I'm not competing with the big boy. And she's like, well, it's okay. Myron went to go talk to Shorty already. And he's like, what? So then Larry is about to go confront Shorty, grabs a gun out of his dresser drawer, and heads over to the hotel. And this is where kind of the event that kicks off the rest of the plot of the movie happens. Because Larry gets to the hotel, and it's like, you've got this Ramon Carrizo guy shows up, and then you've got these gangsters, and like everyone's just spooked of everyone. And Larry is like kind of easing down a hallway. He sees this Ramon Carrizo guy, and he's acting super, super sus. And he like goes down the hallway, turns his back to him, and Ramon Carrizo shows up at Mr. Cortega's room, and there is a giant shootout, basically, where Mr. Cortega shoots at Ramon. Larry thinks that Carrizo shot at him, so he shoots, but he shoots the lamp, but he thinks he's the one who has just killed this Carrizo guy. No idea what that Cortega was even involved in this whatsoever. And he like runs off. The gunshots spook the gangsters, and so Myron's able to get away. And for a brief second, Larry and Myron meet up again just to get separated again because they get spooked. And Myron ends up in a closet, and Larry ends up in Mary's room. And again, this is one of those scenes where it's like Mary's not normal because you've got Larry who's like holding her at gunpoint to let him in the room, and she's all just like, oh my God, you're shaking. Are you okay? And she ends up like caring about him, and he spills his guts to her and everything. She's like, isn't that self-defense? He goes, when you kill one of Shorty's men, it's suicide. So he thinks he just killed one of Shorty's men, and that's the main reason why he's hiding. However, no idea that it had nothing to do with that. It actually has to do with her. But one of the other hotel guests saw him running down the hall with his polka dot scarf. So he's the only suspect at this point for this murder that has nothing to do with him. So at this point, Mary has established that she is taking a cruise to Cuba to go see her island. So her bags are packed, she's ready to go. And she agrees to hide Larry, who, she doesn't realize he ends up hiding in her trunk. So the police come and they're checking all the rooms, and they check her room and they don't find him anywhere. And as they're doing that, this guy from the pier shows up to take her trunk over to the boat docks. Again, no one realizing Larry is now inside of this trunk. All they know is they were looking for someone with a polka dot scarf, And at this point, Myron goes past Mary's room where the door's open because the cops are in there, and he sees the polka dot scarf. So he's immediately like, oh my God, Larry, you need to go save him. And the police come and go. They don't see that Myron's been hiding in the room. So it's just like, did he even need to hide in the trunk? Because they're not that good at looking, apparently. And so Myron and Mary end up meeting, and she's not as receptive to him at first. She's like, "You're crazy. I'm calling the police." And he's like, "No, no, no, please, you'll get me and Larry in trouble." And so they end up running down to the boat docks. However, one of the gangsters ends up seeing them, and he follows them to the boat docks. And at this point, the murder has reached the newspapers. It is all over the news. Polka dot scarf killer, and it has the picture of Mr. Carrizo. And sorry, I really like saying that name. It's so fun. And especially the way they say it. It's so dramatic, and it's just like Mr. Ramon Carrizo. Like, I love it. Anyway, it's a noir, okay? It's a little on the dramatic side at points, but it works. Trust me, it works. So they get down to the docks, and Myron ends up finding Larry in the trunk, and kind of gets him out of there and everything. But the gangsters are there, so they then hide Myron into the trunk because that's the one who they would recognize. And there's actually this really, really funny scene where Larry is talking to Myron, who's locked in the trunk, and the super, super drunk guy comes up, and he thinks this is a ventriloquist act. And so even a cop comes up, and they're acting out like Myron is a ventriloquist dummy in the trunk, and Larry is just this really, really great ventriloquist. And so then, like, he asks the cop to get the drunk guy out of there. And as soon as he lets Myron out of the trunk, drunk guy comes back, and so he has to pretend like he's a dummy again. And it's really funny. He's like, "You don't know how much of a dummy he is." Like, it's really cute and funny. And then they end up having to lock him in the trunk again because the gangster's coming. But this time the trunk is getting loaded onto the boat. And Mary and Larry end up having to like run onto the boat to go and find him at this point. So then Mary finds Myron as the trunk gets delivered to her room. And at this point, Mr. Cortega shows up and says that he's also going to be taking this trip with her down to Havana. He's going to go visit home, totally harmless. And she gets flowers delivered to her. And at this point, she does not trust Mr. Cortega at all. He's trying to kind of like romance slash warn her kind of thing, and she's not really having it. But she gets these flowers with a death threat in them. And Myron has heard this whole thing. So then Mary and Mr. Cortega leave the room. Larry comes in and finds Myron. We have a super, super funny scene where Larry has to help Myron be able to stand up straight because he's been manhandled so much in that trunk that he feels like he's an accordion. So that was really funny. And after all that, they kind of like compare notes and everything and realize, like, okay, this Mary girl's in trouble. Like, they find the flowers, Myron tells him what he heard Mr. Cortega say, and they see in the newspaper that it was Ramon Carrizo who was killed, and they're like, that has to do with Mary. She thought I was Carrizo when I first came to the door. And also, in reading the paper, realized Larry couldn't have possibly been the killer because his gun doesn't match the gun that killed this guy. So he's like, oh my God, we could go home. Cool. Also, it wasn't one of Shorty's men. But then end up deciding against going back because, what's waiting for them in New York? A bunch of gangsters. Or they can help this woman who just helped them and go see Havana. So while they're on the boat, Myron ends up running into Carmen Miranda. And I'm sorry, I'm never going to remember this character's name no matter how many times I watch this movie because I'm just like, that's Carmen Miranda. But I guess Myron and her have a history. He had gotten her fired for dropping a fruit tray in one of her shows, but then from that she ended up finding a great job and became a big star, and she attributes all her success to him getting her fired from that one crappy job. So then Myron and Larry are able to perform with her on the cruise ship. And they have this cute little number called Bingo Bongo. I know it sounds funny, but it's a funny song, and it's a really cute scene and everything. And while they're performing, Cortega is sitting with Mary, and he's still trying to do this whole romance slash scare her kind of thing, and even tries walking her back to her room, and he's really trying to lay it on thick to scare her away from this place. And Larry very unsubtly shows up. He's like, "Oh, excuse me, I'm just dropping a few eaves." And has a really funny line in here because this is where him and Cortega are actually meeting for the first time. And, Cortega's like, oh, are you, interested in some tobacco plant? He's like, I'll make this short for you. I'm a ghostbuster. And if I'm not mistaken, that might have been the first time that term was used.
Well, you heard of trust busters and bronco busters and gang busters? Well, I'm a ghost buster. So watch it, Buster.
So, yeah, that was a funny little like, is that where that came from? Oh my god. If it was, I want to know about it. Like, I didn't see it in the IMDb page for Ghostbusters, but someone needs to know about this connection. Anyway, we get to my favorite song in the whole movie because, Larry successfully scares Cortega away, and him and Mary are just like holding on to each other in the fog on the deck of this boat. And she says, it's just wonderful of you. And he goes, I've been called a lot of things before, but never wonderful. And he sings this just beautiful song called Wonderful that I listen to whenever it rains and I'm on my front porch. It's just this dreamy, breezy, jazzy song that just makes you feel all toasty inside. Really, really love it. Anyway, at this point, someone tries to kill Mary. Someone drops a very, very heavy bucket off of the higher up railing and almost smashes her head in, and they only end up turning away at the right moment because Myron screamed somewhere. So Larry and Myron run off to try and find out who ended up, trying to kill Mary. They don't find the guy, so Larry walks Mary back to her room, and there's this really kind of funny scene where Larry is kissing Mary goodnight, and you see Mr. Cortega totally spying on them from across the hall. And Larry's like walking off, he's all happy, and he just very low key closes Cortega's door and keeps walking. It's like, yeah, no, I see you. So that part's really funny. So the next day, Cortega tries to pull Larry and Myron aside and warn them that why Mary shouldn't go. And they just take this as a, well, you know what? That just gives me the dumbest idea I've ever had. We're going to go on ahead and check it out before she even gets there. Meanwhile, Mary is in her room alone, and she comes in and finds someone has left a voodoo threat on her door. There's like a dagger with a playing card and some mojo on her door. And up walks this like random guy who sees some guy like listening at her door. And he's like, hey, ma'am, sorry. Like, just want to let you know there was someone kind of listening at your door. It's none of my business. Wait, don't I know you? This guy is Tony Warren. He is a random acquaintance of Mary's from somewhere in her past. I don't even know where, honestly. But he's been living in Havana for a while, and he's able to kind of inform her, like, yeah, no, this is voodoo. This is a death threat. And she's like, what the heck? He's like, most places in Cuba don't even really follow voodoo anymore, except for like the more remote southern islands. And she's like, would Lost Island be one of them? He's like, what do you know about Lost Island? She's like, I own it. And so he ends up kind of joining their party and everything. And he is another suitor steps up to the beacon because now he's also just like, oh yeah, no, I'll take you to the show tonight, and afterwards we can celebrate your first night in Havana. And so Larry and Myron are going to be performing with um, Carmen Miranda in Havana. And before they leave, both Tony and Mr. Cortega like warn them kind of separately and together that there is a woman who lives on Lost Island who has a zombie for a son, who he has no free will of his own. He just does whatever he's told, and he just walks around with dead eyes. And so it's just like, okay, voodoo and zombieism has entered the picture. All right, all right. This was a mobster movie a couple minutes ago, right? But then we end up getting to the club in Havana. They're now off of the boat, and Carmen Miranda is late for the performance. She is nowhere to be found. And the guys are like, well, if she doesn't show up, we don't perform. If we don't perform, we don't get paid. And so they're like, well, if you can't get the original, you need a substitute. So this hilarious, hilarious part, you have Myron dressed up in full Carmen Miranda, complete with the fruit hat. The fruit hat is in the movie. And he ends up lip syncing to a Carmen Miranda song. This scene is hilarious. I watched it like right before I filmed this just to be fresh in my head, and I was cracking up even to this day at the scene because he's singing along with the song. However, it's on an old like phonograph record player, and so if it skips, he's lip syncing along with it skipping. If the record slows down, he's lip syncing along with that. But then there's a part where he takes a banana off the hat and eats it, and the record starts playing like it's got its mouth full. So funny. The whole scene cracks me up, and then Carmen Miranda shows up, and she's all just like, okay. And then the three of them perform the next song together called Enchiladas, which is a really fun, funny song. And it's just like a whole stage thing with backup singers and dancers. And it's a really great time. Meanwhile, Mary is watching this in the audience with Tony, and she sees Ramon Carrizo. And then he disappears. So she's all like, am I seeing ghosts now? What's going on? And at the end of the performance, Larry has a note sent to Mary basically saying, like, sorry, I have to break our date tonight. See you tomorrow on the island. So she already knows they went ahead to the island. She leaves a note for Tony in lipstick on a menu saying, sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but I gotta go. So she goes to follow them to the island. So at this point is where the horror aspect of the movie really comes into play. And they really slap you in the face with it, and I love it. So the guys go ahead to this castle and they turn up the creep factor to a 12. They're in this, rowboat going through the swamp. There is all these spooky noises. There's mist and fog everywhere, and just the creepiest sounds. They see the mother of the zombie in her little hut trying to creep them out, kind of. They're like, she's just trying to scare you. I'm like, she's the one who looks scared, but okay. But they end up going to this gothic, gorgeous, abandoned castle with just the like most elegant furnishings and stuff. It is super creepy, has a creepy door, has all these bats in the door frame, and you see this giant portrait of a woman who looks exactly like Mary in a giant black poofy dress pointing. And just this part alone, I love it so much. I'm just like, oh my god, give me the gothic goodness. Just give me. The doors even creak in the best possible way. Like they really went like ham on the soundtrack for this. And by that, I mean the sounds. Like the sound editing is so great in this. And then things start getting full out supernatural. The candle that Larry is holding ends up flying out of the candlestick holder and like going out on the floor. And then they see a full ghost like crawl out of a coffin, chilling, like smoking a pipe and everything. And there's like, they're not going to trick us like that. And so they both run to try and jump the ghost. They just end up jumping each other and going through the ghost. And the ghost is like, oh, I'm going back to bed, and gets back in the coffin. They open up the coffin and try and catch this guy, and it's just a skeleton. Like they went hard on the gothic atmosphere in this third act. It's so great. And then they start hearing random organ music. So they are clearly not alone. At this point, we've even seen like a hand moving behind a curtain somewhere. So we know they are not alone in this castle. And then Mary shows up. And the boatman won't even take her all the way to the island. So there's this like gratuitous scene where she has to get like into a bathing suit and swim to the island. And I'm like, yeah, she's very pretty. Thanks for the bathing suit scene. I guess this was necessary. And even she looks annoyed that it's happening. Like, seriously. But when Mary gets to the island, Mama wakes up the zombie because it looks like she's been told that as soon as this woman gets here, he needs to go and scare her. So Mary makes her way into the castle, and she is immediately being followed by this big, hulking zombie that chains rattle with his every step. You don't even see chains on him, but you hear it. And so, again, sound mixing, just way to go, man. So the guys head downstairs. They don't see Mary at this point. They're going to find where that organ music's coming from. And they find this room full of like coffins and stuff, even though they're like display coffins, I guess. They find the organ and they find the mummy. They make the joke it is Mary's great grandmummy because this is clearly what's left of the woman from the painting. And then they see in a clear coffin the guy who is the spitting image of the ghost they found upstairs, perfectly preserved in this glass coffin. So again, suspect. All over the place. Suspect. And so they find the organ down there, but the organ doesn't work. So they're like, how was it just playing music? Who was playing it? And what's going on? Mary starts getting super creeped out upstairs and she starts calling for Larry, but the guys hear her and don't believe it's her. They think it's another trick at the castle. Meanwhile, while that's happening, Mary is getting full out chased by a zombie. And this is a creepy scene. The music, like I said, the chains with his every footstep, it is creepy. And you can genuinely feel the terror coming off of her in this moment. It's pretty great. She runs up the stairs and locks herself in this bedroom where she finds a trunk with the dress from the painting and gets an idea. So she starts changing into this black dress, and then you see Mr. Cortega is like peeping through the door at her. But then you see this hand come up over his mouth, and he gets attacked from the back, basically. So now no one is peeping on her. So then Larry and Myron come upstairs. The zombie is nowhere to be seen, but all of a sudden, this suit of armor starts attacking them. So the zombie ended up being able to get into the suit of armor without anyone noticing with his giant mace and is like attacking at them. There's a really funny part where Larry's like, Myron, get the can opener. It's funny, okay? It's funny. So they're trying really hard to like kind of fend this guy off. It's not really working. And then Mary comes down the stairs, the spitting image of the portrait. And this is able to distract the zombie and really like kind of redirect him long enough for the guys to be able to get him locked into a closet. So then Mary and Larry are standing in front of her great great grandmother's portrait, and she's like, there's nothing to reincarnation, is there? Because I feel like I understand her. And she's like, what's down there where the portrait is pointing? And Larry's like, oh, just a bunch of your stuffed relatives. And she's like, take me down there. So Larry takes Mary down back to the basement. Myron stays behind in this big old armchair. And they get down there and they see this giant message, like a riddle, painted in an archway down there. And she's like, that's a message if I ever read one. And so all of a sudden there is this riddle for this treasure, because treasure was part of the riddle. So she's like, and everyone's been trying to get this island for some reason. So she's like, I need to find out the secret of this place. So they get over to the organ and she starts playing it. And he's like, that thing doesn't work. And she plays it and it's like, yeah, it does. So she starts playing a little bit. And all of a sudden, the coffin that had the ghost guy in it opens up. And you see Mr. Cortega, who is definitely not doing well right now. He's been stabbed in the back. And he tells her, I tried to come here. I tried to warn you. I tried to protect you. It's like, there's a fortune under this castle. You'll find it. Marching men, music, the organ, marching men, the organ. And Cortega dies. So then Mary looks over where there is like this carving of these like looking like marching men on the wall next to the organ, and quickly finds out these are keys of music. This is a song I'm supposed to play. So sure enough, she starts playing the organ like with the music, and the coffin that Mr. Cortega is in moves away to find a secret staircase that leads downstairs. Meanwhile, you have Myron, who is up at the top of the stairs, who um, quickly finds out that the armchair he is in has a few extra arms. He really notices that when one of them helps him light a cigarette. It's it doesn't really establish if it's the zombie or if it's someone else, but these arms are trying to nab him. And at one point, they actually do get a hold of him, but Mary plays a long note on the piano, and he falls through a trapdoor down this chair and ends up falling out where they are. So then Mary and Larry are like, okay, you stay here, guard the staircase. We're going to go down. And so they go down the stairs and find this not so abandoned mine. This mine has very recently been used. It has lit lamps and everything. So they're like, I wonder who lit that. So, of course, Myron leans on the organ and ends up closing the staircase. So they're trapped down there, and he's just randomly playing stuff at this point, trying to get him back. When we see Monsieur Carrizo come downstairs through the mine, holding Mary and Larry at gunpoint. And he says, but it's not Ramon Carrizo. It is his twin brother, Francisco Carrizo, wanting to know what happened to his brother. Like it really quickly gets a really fast-paced, intense conclusion here. Because once again, just like with the brother, Larry thinks he's talking to him, but there's another shootout with another guy who's off screen, and out walks Tony, who has just shot Francisco in the arm, and says, there's a vein of gold as wide as this island under this castle. and I found it first. Everyone else crossed me, they had to be dealt with, and I tried my best to not make you have to come here. I tried to buy this place from you, but you were just too stubborn and no one's leaving here. Luckily enough, though, something that Myron played upstairs ends up opening a trapdoor directly underneath Tony where he falls, presumably to his death, and a trapdoor above them opens where they can get out. That is the big conclusion climax of this movie. It was fast, but it answered some questions and it was pretty great. Cue to the next morning when Larry and Mary are again all kissy face and they're, planning out their future. Myron is teasing them and he starts playing the wedding march, and then another panel opens. And Myron's just like, oh, hey, there's another one. I wonder what's here. I wonder. And he goes and looks, and genuine terror crosses his face. And he runs screaming to Larry. And Larry's like, we dealt with everything. Everything's over. And when Larry sees this panel, terror, screams, runs, grabs Mary, and they rush out to the stairs, the front stairs of this place. Meanwhile, inside, you see two skeletons, one with the face of Bob Hope and one with the face of Bing Crosby, who my mom had to explain to me when I was a kid watching this for the first time that they were the big comedy duo before Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis kind of took over that scene. And, now that I'm older, I'm like, oh my God, that's Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. That's so funny. And they end the movie with the three of them racing out of the castle. They end up tripping all over each other down a stone staircase, which, actual trivia, that really, really hurt Elizabeth Scott. You can even see where they cut it at a certain point because she got so hurt and they had to help her out. And then they just stick their head back in the door and like, well, that's the end. And that is Scared Stiff. Final thoughts. I obviously love this movie. This is something I've been watching my whole life. It is so great for spooky season. It is just fun, cozy, scary, noir joy, just from beginning to end. I highly recommend this movie for your spooky season watch list. It's pretty hard to find. You can rent it in a couple places. I cannot find it for free anywhere. I still have it on VHS, and that is how I watched it before I came and filmed this. Yes, I still have a VCR. I actually have two. A lot of the movies I watched didn't even make it to DVD, okay? But I really, really hope you add this to your watch list for your spooky season, and I hope you end up enjoying it just as much as I do. And then I hope that you comment just how much you enjoyed this movie underneath, or if you didn't enjoy it, or if you have a similar movie that you want to recommend to me, I would love to hear it. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. It would help me so, so much. Please, like I said, get in the comments. I want to have this be a community where we can talk about these movies. That is literally the whole point. And I am also on Patreon. So if you would like to support me on Patreon, that would be oh so nice. So I can help really grow this channel and make a community and make this a fun, safe place for people who love weird movies. I've been Obscure Girl, and the rest is confetti.